with the section on communication. That's the first thing on your handout, communication. What is your personality's communication style? Well, our personality impacts virtually every aspect of our life, and communication is one of the most important. Just to give you a quick highlight of each of them, let me give a descriptor. The sanguine personality can talk incessantly to anyone about anything, anytime, for as long as he wants to. The choleric is good at quick commands. They like to keep conversations to just the facts, get to the bottom line. And the melancholy is better at listening, but when this melancholy shares, it is on a need-to-know basis. They don't use a lot of fluffy language or extra words. They just want to give the facts. And the phlegmatic, they really prefer to stay uninvolved, and they are good listeners, and sometimes they want to avoid conversations and for fear of getting committed to something. However, when you need to go to someone to talk, they are wonderful people because they give a wonderful, caring, listening ear and a comfort tone of voice. So that's a highlight of each of the four. Now let's get into the specifics of each one. Let's first of all look at the sanguine. I'm going to give some suggestions, advice to sanguines. The first one is to learn to limit conversation. Allow others an opportunity to talk, because you will become a bore. I know it's hard to believe, but you will become a bore if you talk constantly. Learn to speak when you have something to say that people really need to know. Be careful about overwhelming people with your words, especially those who have more of an inward personality, like the phlegmatic and melancholy. You will wear them out, so learn to limit it. Number two is to tone down the voice. The sanguine tone is loud, typically loud, and it stays loud. And that volume is often irritating, and it's often distracting. 1 Peter 3, verse 4 gives some advice to the sanguine. Be known for the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. You might have a code that you use with someone to help remind you to tone it down. And last week I described about having the FM DJ voice. And you may have someone in your home that uses that as your cue to tone it down. They may just say the word FM, and then you begin to talk in a much calmer, sweeter, even tone, which sounds very pleasant now, but you would all be asleep if I continued to talk this way for the entire presentation. So have a code that you might use. Number three, learn to listen. Practice active listening with other people. And that means that you look them in the eyes, that you respond to them, that you ask them questions that pertain to what they're trying to share with you. That's active listening. And then number four, sanguines try to stay on track, because the trademark from the sanguine is to move from topic to topic to topic, and they just weave them so beautifully. You don't know what you started talking about and where you ended, and you don't know when you're supposed to jump in and comment. So sanguines try to stay focused on the topic at hand. Now, most of the people in the room are not sanguine, so we need help in talking with sanguines. So cholerics, you might make an effort to be interested in their colorful stories, because typically cholerics just want the bottom line, but you have to have conversation with sanguines, so be interested in what they have to tell you. And that means you have to stop what you're doing, which is the trademark of the choleric, and listen and pay attention. And be careful not to crush the spirit of the sanguine, because they can be very tender-hearted, and they would not appreciate the command that the choleric often gives. Melancholy, look for a way to compliment the sanguine. Laugh at her stories when it's appropriate, and be sure to give attention to that sanguine. See, melancholy suffers from a critical spirit often, and they don't have time to listen to all the sanguine stories, so try to pay attention. The phlegmatic, you may feel silly, but try to get excited at the level that the sanguine is excited. And you will feel uncomfortable, but they will love you for it, because they have this high energy, and you're telling wonderful things that with great energy and enthusiasm, and they would love for you to respond occasionally at that level. Trust me, it will make their day when you do that. Let's look at the choleric. Number one is be interested in others. Cholerics are very focused on production, and so people get in the way. They have a brisk manner that makes others afraid to approach them. So it's important to listen to others and to give them attention and be interested in them. And another important tip in this category is to let others complete their sentences. The choleric wants to finish your sentences because the choleric can say it much faster and a better way than you can. So let the cholerics back off and let them finish. Number two is to learn to cultivate small talk. See, cholerics don't like chit-chat. They want to get to the bottom line. So they don't want to take time in a conversation or a meeting to do informal conversation. They find it a waste of time. So it's important for the choleric to branch out, broaden his horizons, and take an interest in others. And then number three is ask rather than demand. This means to get your manners on. To ask, say please, say thank you. And sometimes the niceties are ignored by the choleric, so it's important to be extra nice and thoughtful to other people. And that sometimes means you must change your tone of voice. A good verse for the choleric to keep in mind is Proverbs 16, verse 24. Kind words are like honey, enjoyable and helpful. Now, if you are not choleric, but you communicate with cholerics, let's look at some advice for you. The sanguine. Stick to the bottom line. Sanguines, it's really hard for you to do that because you have so much to say. But if you will use this, it will help you. Consider the choleric the conductor of an orchestra. And when the conductor points at you, you're supposed to play. The same thing in language. When the choleric acknowledges you, speak. Say it then. And be careful not to have any unwanted solos because they might bark at you if you do. So look for those opportunities. The choleric will give you cues as to when it's time for you to say something. This is important in the workplace where you have a choleric boss who has an agenda and you have something you need to say and want to share, so you look for those cues so that you'll know when it's appropriate to say something. Then number three is, number two, melancholics. Remember that the choleric has a big to-do list. Their time is valuable. They have lots of reasons not to listen to you. And melancholies have lots of information to share because melancholies are our researchers. They have the data. They know the facts. They know the details. They've done all their homework and all their research on whatever topic it is, from vacationing in Panama City to building a highway. They will know the details. But the choleric simply wants to know which hotel has the best price at the beach on the week that you want to go to Panama City. And they want to trust that you've done the homework to make it happen. So keep that in mind when you're dealing with a choleric. The phlegmatic, speak more quickly than your usual pace. The phlegmatic is a laid-back personality. They're usually slow-going, slow-speaking, and the choleric likes things at a very clipped pace. So what you might do, phlegmatics, is to practice reading something, and then time yourself, and then practice reading it again 25% faster. See if that helps you in your communication, because that choleric inevitably will finish your sentences if you don't get through. Another reminder for the phlegmatic is don't be double-minded with a choleric. In other words, make up your mind. A choleric is very decisive, and a phlegmatic is typically indecisive. And what that choleric wants is for you to make a decision one way or the other. So be mindful of doing that. And then the melancholy. Number one tip is to learn to lighten up a little bit. Now, melancholies have a good sense of humor, but it's not on the same page as some of the other personalities. They don't want to use their humor to entertain. That would be frivolous. But try to lighten up when things are funny and they are humorous. But melancholies have this wonderful subtle humor that comes through conversations. And so learn to use that and express yourselves. Number two, enter into the conversation. The melancholy is a wonderful listener, and often they will get slighted because they do not join in a conversation, especially at a busy dinner table where those melancholies are sitting quietly, they're eating, they're paying attention to their food and listening to everybody talk, and the cholerics and the sanguines are dominating the conversation. So melancholies have to have a way to enter in, and sometimes they have to make sure that they do get to be a part of the conversation. And then number 3, think positively. Work on thinking positively. This means you might have to do away with a critical spirit, which haunts the melancholy, because they have an ideal way that things are supposed to be, and they don't handle it well when things don't measure up. So then they tend to be critical of other people. Ephesians 4 verse 29 is a good word for the melancholy, who can tend to have the critical words and might have to tame the tongue. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for the building up of others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So good advice for the melancholy. You see, a melancholy thinks that it would be terrible to offer praise or words of encouragement to someone for substandard work. See, melancholics have this standard that must be met, and if they compliment someone who has not gone to their standard, then they feel as if they are cheating, and it's unacceptable to do that. So melancholies really need to work on looking at others and praising them for what they've been able to accomplish according to other standards. And then if you're communicating with a melancholy, if you are sanguine, be sensitive to her schedule and her level of interest. Melancholies have a schedule because they also, like the choleric, have a to-do list. It would not be a good thing to barge into the office of someone who is a melancholy, who obviously is busy at work, has things to do, has the list, and they don't have much time. And if you're a sanguine and barge into the office with news, then you're going to disrupt their train of thought. And so one strategy might be this, is to approach the office door, lean in, and say, I have some really exciting news to share. Let me know when it's convenient. And so what you've done is you've whetted their appetite, you've appealed to their personality type, and you're letting the conversation take place on their schedule. And so it would probably fit in for both of you. And then if you have to go away and call your best friend or tell somebody else in the office this wonderful news that you need to share, somebody who's not on that same time frame. Then if you are communicating with a melancholy and you are a choleric, you won't have to listen to many of their stories if occasionally you give them your full attention. Now, melancholies want to tell you a lot of information, and they want to go back to the beginning. They like to give you the backstory. Now, it's in a different way from what the sanguine does. The sanguine also likes to give you backstories, but they weave it and thread it so it's very hard to keep up with it. The melancholy is very diligent in getting the order of the story. They probably have notes in hand where they have done their homework and their research, and they want to make sure they tell you all these details. So if you're a choleric and you will listen occasionally and affirm this melancholy, then every time they won't ask you to do it. And then you can kindly say, I know you've done a lot of work. I appreciate all that you have done. If you just let me know the final decision, I'm really good to go. And if you are phlegmatic, this melancholy is going to appreciate when you show up with facts and details. Because phlegmatics might tend just to come in to have a conversation about something, but it's not really relevant to whatever the melancholy needs to talk about. So make sure that you're prepared, you've done some homework in advance, and that you have your resources ready to share. And then the phlegmatic. Phlegmatic number 1 advice is to be enthused. Get excited about something. You might have to work to be expressive, especially when someone gives you a gift or makes a kind gesture. It would be good to respond at the same level of enthusiasm in which the gift was given. So learn to be demonstrative and what you would think would be over enthusiastic. It probably won't be received as over-enthusiastic, but it may make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Philippians 4 verse 8 tells us, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on those things. So think of things as excellent and praiseworthy, and that should help to get you geared up to be enthusiastic. Express opinions. When you are asked, what would you like to do? Or where would you like to go? What is the typical response for the phlegmatic? I don't care. It doesn't matter. Whatever you would like to do. And what we know from last week is that they truly believe that. But there are occasions when others need for you to weigh in on a decision and to have a choice, especially if it's someone who's been making decisions all day long and they just would like someone else to weigh in and choose. And so be careful to express your opinions. Third advice is to open up. See, the phlegmatic is often proud of stoic tendencies. If you think back to the chart we looked at last week, I gave you a chart that had the 4 personalities, and in the middle it has unemotional and emotional. The 2 unemotional personalities are the phlegmatic and the choleric. And they tend to be proud of the fact that they are unemotional when it comes to things that are tender-hearted or things that would make you cry. And so they are proud of the fact that they don't give way to tears very often. And so what we might encourage the phlegmatic is to open up a little bit more and show express your feelings a little bit more visually. And then if you are communicating with a phlegmatic and you are a sanguine, use that natural ability you have to be positive and to be encouraging. Look for the good. This person needs encouragement for who he is. That's where they live. They want to be appreciated for who they are. When we look in just a few minutes at the emotional needs of each personality, we see that that is the greatest need for the phlegmatic, to be appreciated for who he is or who she is. If you are a choleric, time is always an issue for a choleric. But time is an issue for phlegmatics too. It's slow time. And so cholerics, be careful not to speak with rapid fire commands. Don't try to dismiss the phlegmatic and shut them out because they're not responding quickly as you would have them to do. So develop patience and practice good listening skills with the phlegmatic. And if you're melancholy, rein in that ability to spot the negatives. Look for a way to praise. Words don't cost anything, so give them away freely to the phlegmatic. Now, that is the section on communication. So I'm going to pause just a minute, and we'll have some questions that get you caught up.